Hello everyone. So I am now compelled to make a video on the latest buzzword in the crypto space, NFTs. Now, I think it's easy to get bogged down in the technical details, um, and even by explaining what most people don't know what fungibility even is as a concept. But I don't think I'm going to explain it because I think it's irrelevant. The whole thing is sort of predicated on a myth that no one has any incentive to shed any light on apart from people like me. Um, Bitcoin has some magical properties, and they are achieved in ways I've explained in many videos on this channel. And one of those properties is that Bitcoin enforces the ownership of the bitcoins on the network that it has generated internally within that network. And it does that through a whole heap of mechanisms and through some theoretical amazingness and also just some practical achievements and scale and all of that is to say Bitcoin is now something you can invest billions of dollars in and be very comfortable that no one is able to turn around and say there are now you owned 3% of all the bitcoins, and but now you only own 2% because we've decided that there are now more than 21 million bitcoins. We've decided to double the supply. That can't happen in Bitcoin. And but not only can that not happen, you can't also be told the bitcoins you bought are no longer yours, or they can't be spent, or any number of other things that might happen to undermine some of the assumptions you make when you're getting involved in something. These are new assumptions, and you're not able to make them in the past. You can't say how many United States dollars are there. Okay, I want to own 1% of all the United States dollars. You can't do that because there's no way of assessing how many there are. No one really knows how many there are, and no one could ever no one the whole thing is set up in such a way so that more can be arbitrarily created. There's nothing. It's a thing that people throw at Bitcoin all the time, is it's not backed by anything, but actually Bitcoin is. The US dollar isn't. It's not backed by anything. It's certainly not backed by gold. It's just backed by a please don't print too much of this and devalue my savings. It's backed by sort of faith that politicians won't do that. um Bitcoin has all these magical hard currency properties that haven't existed until Bitcoin was around. And the only thing like it, kind of, was gold, because gold, you couldn't really fake it, though you kind of could, and counterfeit gold happens all the time, like those 60, $80 billion worth of gilded copper that was pretending to be gold in a Chinese vault they found a couple of months ago. I keep bringing that up on this channel because it's so hilarious. You can't do that with Bitcoin. There's no fake Bitcoin floating around. And if there is, you personally can figure out with very few resources that those bitcoins someone tried to send to you weren't real bitcoins. That's great. This has never existed till Bitcoin, something that is truly uncounterfeitable just because of how low the resource requirements are to verifying what it is. Fantastic. What else is there? Genuinely scarce. Supply completely unrelated to demand. If demand for the next best thing to Bitcoin, i.e., gold, if demand for gold shoots up, gold mining shoots up. More of it enters the market. The squeeze doesn't occur in quite the same way as it does with Bitcoin, where if demand for Bitcoin shoots up, mining shoots up. Actually, we don't suddenly get the market having a bunch more Bitcoin because of the difficulty adjustment algorithm, whereby the Bitcoin network suddenly makes it more difficult for Bitcoins to be produced in proportion to the amount of extra people mining. So the inflation rate remains constant, and doesn't matter if twice the amount of people start mining Bitcoin tomorrow, within 2 weeks the network will adjust it and make it twice as hard to mine Bitcoin, which means same amount of Bitcoin created every day. Currently 900 new coins every day. That will halve to 450 coins every day in 2024, which will be the next halving event. Um, there are a few other qualities that Bitcoin has, and one of the most important and hard to understand ones is all of the nodes that run on the network. And what those nodes do is they collectively and individually verify and maintain the integrity of what the miners present to the network. as work that they have done, and in order to append or extend Bitcoin's ledger. And if there aren't a lot of those, that means the miners suddenly have too much power and too much control over the network, and ultimately, because people mine in pools, it creates a period, an element of centralization within Bitcoin that would be quite dangerous, and a place where you could attack it and take out the whole system. The nodes really are the final say. The nodes can't do anything without the miners mining new blocks, and the nodes get to participate in a network that gets its security from the fact that no one can append the Bitcoin ledger without an enormous amount of computing power. That's fantastic. That protects the integrity of the network. But you also need people verifying the work that's being done. That's the second half of it, and it's just as or even more important than what the miners do. That's the part that's not understood, and I've gone over it over and over again on this channel, but it's really difficult to understand for some reason, and really difficult to explain, and I'm getting better with my explanation of it. But if we can take that as a given for now, the point is, Bitcoin has what it has technologically, but it has what it has as at a certain scale as well, and that creates something that means you can make all these assumptions, which is Bitcoin can't be it can't be inflated arbitrarily, the supply can't be changed, transactions can't be reversed, the blockchain, the ledger, it's immutable, all of these things. And if I move Bitcoin, Bitcoins move because I say they move, and no one's in control. It's decentralized. These are the qualities Bitcoin has, and it has them for a whole bunch of complicated reasons that nothing else can make. Nothing else can make anything like those kinds of claims. And people are making claims that they have achieved the same thing just by copying Bitcoin's architecture, but not the architecture of how Bitcoin's network looks today, but just the way the code is written and the way the database kind of works. But they've done it in a way where they haven't achieved the resilience. Like, you need this huge proof of work requirement to appending the ledger for part of your security, and then you need a huge amount of nodes rejecting any tomfoolery that goes on with the proof of work in order to be able to rely on the network as a whole. Nothing else in the crypto space has done that. But I'm being unnecessarily technical, and I'm dismissing a lot of what's happening in the scam coin space based on something which I'm basically being far too generous here, because NFTs and the other various iterations of, reinventing the wheel that has happened on the Ethereum network, what they tend to do is they make these exaggerated claims, and they borrow some of the assumed security and immutability that Bitcoin has a reputation for fraudulently. Because Bitcoin has these qualities, and it has them in such a powerful way but people don't understand the mechanisms that provide those qualities, and it really is hard to explain. And I hope you watch what I talk about on this channel a lot, and you start to pick up on how it has what it has. And it does take a long time to understand it, but copying the style of the database, the alleged decentralization of it, doesn't really do anything in and of itself. And this is something we've been trying to explain for 5 years now, or longer. But I mean, since Ethereum was the one that came along where we really started having to battle every day against bullshit, against marketing hype, against people really just creating over-exaggerated claims, borrowing from Bitcoin's achievements, and saying we can do this too, and we can do it with an even greater feature set, and taking advantage of the fact that most people just don't have the time or the technical chops to analyze these claims and figure out why they're bullshit. And it's really hard to do, and it falls to people like me to do it. And I get hate all the time for it. People are like, oh, you're a Bitcoin maximalist, you're just scared Ethereum's going to eat your lunch, it's going to do this, which is a retarded claim, because if that was the case, I would just sell my Bitcoin and buy some Ethereum if it genuinely was better. I'm not committed to Bitcoin solely on the basis of tribal loyalty to it. I genuinely understand that it is a a trillion. It's out of the league of anything else that exists. It doesn't matter whether you're talking about shitcoins or whether you're talking about fiat currencies or whether you're talking about precious metals or any stock. It's out of the league of all of these things. Apologies, my screensaver went on. That means until something else that comes along that can outdo it with that regard, I'm not going to slip. I'm not going to switch, rather. And it's because the only real analogy for it is the English language or the internet, which are two decentralized networks which are impossible to control by any centralized entity because they're just too distributed in how they're set up. There's just too many instances of what's going on. It doesn't, this is my analogy that I always come back to, which is the internet is, it escapes me for the minute. My analogy usually comes back to language, which is no individual can define the meaning of a word, and it takes a lot of energy and resources to try and force changes in language. And indeed, it's usually entire movements that are saying we're not okay with the, political correctness is a good example of it. Like, it changes. Like people used to, you'd say black people, and then it turned into African American, and now it's people of color. And these are usually very long and slow, painful changes in the lexicon. And that's because no one's directly actually in control of the language. And then the internet, of course, itself. My point that I was trying to make a minute ago is the shitcoins. I always analogize, is that a word? I always do that with regard to other improvements to internet technology and making whole new networks with better technology than the internet. And the point is, you're never going to use them because the internet does what it does at such a tremendous scale that it has all these wonderful network effects that you can't replicate no matter how technologically gifted you are, unless you really do something that's a total game changer. Nothing in the shitcoin space is ever going to do that. And I mean, all this. So let's summarize. Let's put everything I've just done right now. Let's go back to the beginning. And the reason I'm making this video and doing all this preamble is to say that now we have a brand new iteration of the Ethereum marketing hype machine. And it's called the NFT. And again, I don't want to go into what NFT means as an acronym because I don't actually think it's relevant. I think what's going on here is that there is a misunderstanding on the most primitive level possible, on something that I realized only over the last 2 days is a misunderstanding that I can't believe people are actually making, which is, let's say none of the stuff I've just said is relevant because this is all a more technical and deep level analysis of why you need certain qualities within a blockchain and an ecosystem in order to achieve decentralization and censorship resistance and all that. Let's go on a higher level than that. And let's look at it from the fact that Bitcoin is a network where new Bitcoins are created internally inside its system. They are moved around internally inside the system. They are spent by people inside the system. And if anyone tries to spend coins, which they don't have the private keys for, the coins just cannot be moved. And all of this is internally enforced inside the network because Bitcoin, the token, is created, and it's created entirely within the network, and everything that happens is within the network, as opposed to, say, creating something outside of Bitcoin in the real world, like, a car or a piece of art, assigning it a particular number because you're the creator of it, uploading that data into Bitcoin's blockchain, and then expecting the same level of security and enforcement of ownership rights and property rights to be somehow magically a part of this thing that exists in the real world. That is a huge leap, and it's what everyone's doing in their assumptions and all the borrowed qualities that Ethereum gets to enjoy from Bitcoin's success. And this is unbelievably absurd. And I don't know if I've made the point well enough there. I'm saying that if I own a Bitcoin because Bitcoin's network says I own a Bitcoin, That just means I have the private key to move that around. But nothing that happens with that Bitcoin, from its creation to every single movement of it, is something that is outside of the purview of the Bitcoin network itself. That's not the same as if I have $20 and I write a signed affidavit saying I'm giving it to someone else, uploading that affidavit or a hash of it to the Bitcoin network, getting it inside a block, because you can upload random data into Bitcoin's blockchain. And then if that random person says, yeah, I have $20 now, I have an affidavit of it that's in Bitcoin's blockchain, that doesn't suddenly magically mean the laws of the universe come together to enforce humanity recognize his ownership of that $20. It just means that if there's a dispute and we go to court, there is now a bit of evidence that exists in a public ledger that says I gave him the $20. That doesn't mean the court says, yeah, okay, he did, and there's nothing we can do about it, because you're back outside of the purview of Bitcoin's internal system. You're in the real world here. You're not in Bitcoin's internal ledger. Bitcoin and all databases that work like it can't enforce ownership rights of tokens that are created externally from the system, because that would be absurd, because the world is not run by a blockchain. The world, and it can't interface with it in that manner. It's just NFTs being the case. NFTs are when you create something that is not creative natively to the Ethereum network or any network. We don't even need to make this about Ethereum. It's just about the absurdity of taking something that exists outside of a blockchain and expecting the blockchain to enforce ownership of the thing and in the real world somehow. It's so crazy to me that people think it can jump across from being a database to being somehow an authority figure in the real world. It's not that if I send you Bitcoin, there's a record of it in the public ledger in Bitcoin's blockchain that I sent you that Bitcoin. It's not that if we disagree with it, there's a fucking court case and then the judge looks at Bitcoin's blockchain and says, yeah, you did. It's because if I sent you those coins, there is nothing I can do to ever get them back. There's nothing that the world could ever do to deny the fact that the transaction had happened, because Bitcoin enforces it internally. So if your Bitcoins are stolen, it's the same thing as if you just spent them. There's no difference, because the system doesn't have any of that understanding or that sophistication to it. That's the point. That's why you can never be denied your coins. That's why transactions can never be reversed in Bitcoin. This is amazing, but nothing is relevant apart from the actual token created and moved around by the network. That's why you have Bitcoin the network and you have Bitcoin the currency, and the two things support one another. The miners only mine because the currency they produced when they mine is worth a certain amount, and the more that currency is worth, the more people mine, and the more people mine, the harder it is to attack the network through mining, and the harder it is to attack it, the higher the value of the token is, and so it's a self-reinforcing system. None of this is true in the other blockchains, because you don't, well, for every single possible reason, but Bitcoin is swallowing up all of that proof of work incentive like the black hole it is, which means that, I mean, it's really such a thing as, like, I make long rambling videos about this stuff, and it might be hard to watch, and it might be confusing and technical, and I wish it wasn't, because I'm really just that one fucking guy that no one likes, standing there in the town square while the emperor walks out there naked, and I'm going, he's not wearing any clothes, and everyone's like, how? Explain how he's not wearing any clothes. And then I'm sitting there going, well, there aren't clothes. Like, and I'm having to go, these are what clothes are. They're a thing made maybe of cotton or whatever the fuck. And he's not wearing them. So, like, people asking for explanations, and I'm saying, look, all Ethereum is, and all shitcoins are just public databases. If you upload a thing in that database and you're the Kings of Leon and you're saying, we've just sold an NFT of our latest album, and this NFT means that in a public database, rather than us sign a contract with whoever buys this thing, we are going to just make a thing that people can buy using a burnt token within a blockchain that will be non-fungible, which means it can't be converted for other tokens within that blockchain. So what? That's basically analogous to buying food. Like, I've got $10, I can buy anything worth $10. I can swap it for anything else of equivalent value. I'm going to buy a margarita with it. Now it's non-fungible because I can't swap the margarita for anything else. Maybe I'll get lucky, but I drink the margarita. If I don't drink the margarita, then I wasted $10. I can't turn it back into $10 like without an argument with, the place I'm in. That's non-fungibility. All you're doing is taking a token on a blockchain, turning it into something that can't be turned back into the native token as a sort of public display of a contractual agreement. So, okay, great, you've made a contractual agreement, and instead of it being a private contract, it's public. What does that change? Absolutely fucking nothing. Because if the Kings of Leon say, all right, all the agreements we made in our NFT that this person bought and then sold to this person and sold to this person, yes, we've tracked it all publicly in the blockchain. Fantastic. So fucking what? There was a bunch of stuff in it that said you could come backstage every single concert we do. You get to hear new albums a week before they get released on Spotify, whatever the fuck it is. What happens if the Kings of Leon say, we've changed our mind? Does Ethereum's blockchain come to life and say, you can't do that? Blah! We now have created a new situation. We've changed the laws of the universe whereby they will be teleported from the front row seats to backstage at the end of the gig, and the agreement will magically be enforced by the rules of mathematics and the rules of physics. Of course not, because this is not native to the chain. This is a situation where all that you can do if they defy the agreement is sue them or attack them with regard to their reputation and say they violated a contractual agreement. Here's the contract. It's in Ethereum's fucking blockchain. Who cares? That doesn't make any difference to if you just had the contract in the first place and it was private and you just had it at home. It doesn't make any difference. So what Ethereum has done, which is what Ethereum always does, is take something that existed before, wrap it up with a bunch of needless, pointless electronical bump, throw so much technical jargon at it, make everyone think it's the next best thing. Everyone with a bunch of money that's got a job doesn't have time to research this stuff. It's been done deliberately, just deep enough with enough technical confusion in it that you're going to throw a bit of money in it and say maybe it's the next Bitcoin. Oh, it wasn't. Okay, I lost $500. That sucks. This whole thing is aimed at people like that. And it sucks because they know cynically that people will just spend a bit of money on hypey technical stuff without doing too much research. And it's such a shame to see because they are not building things to last. They are building houses on sand, and they're constantly telling you it's going to be cool, it's going to be cool, and it never is. This is an example I love to use of this is electronic voting. There has never been a better system in a democracy than paper, pen, secret ballot, counting all the ballots by everyone with every different incentive, all watching like hawks. You can trust the outcome of that better than you can trust anything else. What did we decide to do in America? Get a bunch of closed source software with unverifiable machines, with the software's written in fucking Venezuela, where we know the politics is corrupt as hell. Why are we doing this? Why have we made something that any computer person, any technical person will tell you, this is how you make everything so much more complicated. There's no accountability, no verifiability of anything. No one has a clue what's going on. And everyone, you've seen it made fun of for ages. You know, Homer Simpson trying to vote for Al Gore, and he presses the button and it says, you've just voted for George Bush. You know, we know the Simpsons are right about everything. Like, why do this? Why do we have... F is what I say. What I like to say about it is it's the classic tech enthusiast as opposed to the computer programmer. The tech enthusiast has the internet, connected to every light bulb in his house, and his stove and oven are connected to the internet, and there's a smartphone app where he can turn it on, make it hot in that room and cold in that room, and he can turn his oven on when he's an hour away from home and all that. This is all great when it's sold to you by excited, naive, and deceptive salesmen. What they don't tell you is that yeah, your car, great. Sorry about the time you got in it and it thought you were a thief and it locked your car doors and called the police and then you got in trouble for wasting police time. All this is because your car was great. You didn't need all that. Your oven that accidentally wouldn't turn on, or, it was programmed to turn on at 4 o'clock in the afternoon so that your food would be warm when you got home at 4:30. But your Wi-Fi credentials dropped out of it because there was a power cut. So now your food isn't ready when you thought it would be. And why did I do this? I had a programmable oven from the 80s that worked that I could tell to turn on like at whatever time. You know, there are so many things that are needlessly technological that tech enthusiasts love that computer programmers wouldn't touch, because computer programmers know that, if you're mature, that you don't overcomplicate the issue. That's just an issue of maturity rather than technical prowess. But we've seen this in Ethereum since the beginning. Bitcoin is providing everyone with the answer to a problem that we've been asking since the beginning of time, which is how can we reliably store value? And more recently, how can we escape the theft of inflation? How can we escape the risk of confiscation? Because they've done it with our gold before. They've turned around and said, if you got gold, you've got to turn it into your central bank now, or there's a big fine, you're a terrorist, blah, blah, blah. These are problems that needed solutions. And Bitcoin came along and said, here's a solution. Ethereum is the answer to a question no one ever fucking asked. We don't need any of this stuff because we already have it. And it's been made worse on Ethereum. Step number 1, the DAO, the Decentralized Autonomous Organization. This was Ethereum's first big project, and it was the shining beacon of its what's the word? Its statement, or its intention, or its slogan, I should say, which is unstoppable code, world computer. That was Ethereum at the beginning. Congratulations, we're going to run the DAO, the Decentralized Autonomous Organization. What happens? There's a bug in it, so that unstoppable code, we're going to stop it because it's losing a bunch of my friends' money and I'm in control of this system, so stop. So Ethereum pivoted. We don't do that anymore. We're not an unstoppable computer. We're not unstoppable code because, if we were, we'd be running what's now called Ethereum Classic, which is an abandoned project, which is the one that didn't stop the code, which, make of that what you will. So the next thing was ICOs, which was unregistered securities. And the reason companies want to be unregistered is because they want to do stuff that is illegal. And it's not very often that I will defend the legal system, but there is one instance where I'm perfectly happy to say companies shouldn't be allowed to do that. That instance is where you buy X amount of shares of a company and you don't expect the company to turn around and say, yeah, we're making 1 trillion more of them tomorrow, because that's going to really undermine your investment. And ICOs are basically companies doing what companies do when they allow you to buy stocks and shares in their company without any of the regulations that are there for very good reasons. So I'm not defending the SEC or anything like that, but the only reason people would do this is because they want to scam a bunch of investors. And that was all that happened with ICOs. Every single one of them was a scam. What was Ethereum's third reinvention of the wheel and making the wheel square instead of round? What was the third thing it did? Oh yeah, DeFi, decentralized finance. Every single project in it completely centralized, rather similar to the NFT scam. Uploading an agreement into an allegedly decentralized database. Ethereum's not decentralized, but let's say it was. Uploading an agreement or a contract, just like NFTs, into a decentralized ledger does not mean that that contract can be enforced unless the contract is contained or the logic of it is entirely contained and created within the network internally. So the minute you try and interface with the real world using a blockchain, you're back down to, well, we disagree. Okay, well, here's what the ledger says. So what? The ledger can't enforce anything on the real world. It doesn't. It can only force what's internal to it. And I've said that enough times now that I hope it's starting to make sense. So, what was that? DeFi. Yeah, I mean, that project didn't last long. The scams didn't last long with that. Everything in it was a centralized scam. Of course it was. And, everyone that got involved in it lost money except the people that sort of cynically, again, connected and pretend the whole thing is an opportunity and a revolution when it's really just the same shit we've seen for since the beginning of time, really. All this stuff is just it's just it's so painful to watch scam after scam, and I try my hardest to help people avoid this stuff, and it's something that it's very unrewarding, frankly. But there are so many people that are gonna look back at this and go, Jesus Christ, I can't believe I ever drank the Ethereum Kool-Aid. It was just a whole bunch of lies, and it is. It's just complete borrowed glory. It's reflected glory. It goes. Bitcoin changed everything, and it had to come up with an incredible system that took decades to come up with, and all of the previous cryptocurrencies, all of the previous attempts at digital money failed because no one managed to achieve what Bitcoin achieved. Bitcoin achieved it, and then everyone else is like, yeah, okay, we'll just take what Bitcoin did and improve it a bit. I'm like, no, it takes a lot to do what Bitcoin did, and no one else has a hope in hell of ever doing it again because Bitcoin already did it. The internet was the dream. You can't build an internet now because the internet is dominant. It's the dominant information network, and Bitcoin is the dominant monetary network. That means it will suck in all the energy of all of the use cases for being a dominant monetary network, which means we have to invent random use cases that no one ever asked for with Ethereum. And like, this is a funny thing. I do get people like, like people, since I'm such a Bitcoiner, I have people like roughly in my periphery that will sort of contact people who know me, and because it's sort of osmosis is outwards from me and infects the other people around me, and then they start talking about it, and then other people contact them with like, oh, you're into Bitcoin, all right, you should check out Ethereum, it's like Bitcoin's newer, improved, bigger brother and all that. And I'm like, all right, like, okay. I always try and have an open mind with it and drive myself crazy because it's always disappointing when I do. And I go, what's going on with this? What are they saying about Ethereum? And I don't want to straw man it. I want to steel man it. But it's always the most retarded stuff. It's always something like, oh, well, it changes everything because you can have decentralized apps. And I'm like, all right, well, they're not going to be decentralized because they're as decentralized as if you have an app running on an Amazon web server, But tell me, what if you could have a decentralized application? What would be, what's a good example of one of those? And no one seems to have come up with a good example of one. I don't want to be narrow-minded here, and if someone can tell me we need a decentralized app, the thing is, Bitcoin is a decentralized application, but it's self-reinforcing, and it has its own network and its own token to create a robust system that can operate entirely within itself, and it only interfaces with the real world with regard to the energy it consumes, and that's it. And that is the only true way to link it to something, which is, it's linked to time and space and the fundamental resources there are. Like, you can't. That's why people come along and say, hey, let's have Bitcoin, but without the energy consumption. I'm like, you don't understand the first thing about it. You can't. If it's not produced via energy, then it has to consume something else, which is, something that's created by government decree, or, we can't have that. It's not something that can be relied on. Energy can't be faked. You can't fake energy, but you can fake whatever the dollar is. You can fake a reason to print a bunch of dollars. You can also, let's stop that train of thought right there and return to whatever I hope the point was I was making, which definitely escaped me by this point. I'm getting really sick of seeing scam after scam and creation of a solution to a problem which no one needed. Like, what is the problem here that we're trying to solve with these smart contracting platforms? You can create. Remember, the problem with smart contracts is this ultimately might be me finally realizing why none of this is ever going to work. Obviously, apart from Bitcoin, because everything within Bitcoin, as I said over and over again in this video, is internal. But when you have smart contracts, unless the smart contracts are internal to the network as well, and every element of them is internal to it, you're left with interfacing with the real world, which means nothing has been changed about traditional contracts except the fact that they are public information, and that even in if the best case scenario plays out, they persist, as opposed to, oh, Ethereum is like dead and no one has any fucking nodes and the 20 people that were running nodes don't care enough to sort of, the unwieldy database is all crashed and there's conflicting data in there anyway, and so the contracts are all gone. I mean, that's actually pretty likely to happen. But let's say Ethereum's way better than it is, and say, yes, if you upload a contract to the Ethereum network, it will persist, like any data in Bitcoin's blockchain will persist. Okay, let's be generous and say that's possible. What happens? It doesn't mean that the contract gets enforced. It just means that the contract exists somewhere. So what if you have a contract, if you own the masters to someone's record, and you know, if you write a song, you can email the lyrics to yourself, boom. If someone then rips off your song and claims copyright over it, you know, you can just say, here's an email I sent to myself with the lyrics a year before you claim to have written it. That's as effective. What problem is being solved here? Why do we need contracts to be done in this needlessly complicated way? Because it's not even as good. It's just worse in every way. So what I'm going to say at the end of this video is, can you please just leave it, guys? Whatever bullshit comes after NFTs on the Ethereum network or the smart contracting network, because it looks like Ethereum's kind of dying now and it's being replaced by Tron and CZ's Binance coin and all that stuff. And to be honest, like, you can do smart contracting on the Liquid network now, you know, which is a side chain of Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is slowly, if there is ever anything to do in a smart contracting ecosystem, you can do it on Bitcoin now as well. So, and anyone that's actually serious about their project would obviously do it that way as well. So, you know, nonetheless, whatever the next bullshit hype train is, can you please, like, spare me the anger and the annoyance of having to go through the technical elements of how it works? Because I've been on the subreddit, you know, NFTs, and I've read all of the claims they make, and you know what? Let's just straight up go for it. Reddit.com/r/NFT. Is that the one? Do I want NFT or do I want NFTs? There's going to be, yeah, I think it's the right one. What are NFTs? How to mint an NFT? Why are NFTs valuable? Starting guide to NFTs. You may be new to blockchain and crypto, or you may have just been in crypto for a few years at this point, but in both cases, you are probably now just learning about NFTs. This will be a guide that is ever living, changing to help introduce NFTs, what gives them value, and how you can get started in the NFT space. A non-fungible token is a unique individual token existing on a blockchain such as Ethereum. Unlike cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, each NFT token contains unique data, meaning non-fungible tokens are not interchangeable with each other. This non-fungible nature of the tokens means their use cases differ greatly from their fungible counterparts. They do differ greatly, but only in the fact that they are completely useless. But let's not talk about that yet. A normal token can be exchanged for the same type of token equally without any difference. Okay, this is my margarita example again, and we're just explaining what fungibility actually is. Yes, a $10 bill is generic and could be used for anything you can buy a $10 bill with. A drink that's worth $10 can't be used in the same respect, but maybe someone will say, okay, that's worth $10, you know. Oh, you owed me $10? Just buy me a margarita. Cool, we'll call it quits. You know, that's the difference. That's what they're explaining here. It's an explanation of what fungibility is. Fair enough, we need to discuss what fungibility is to just talk about non-fungible tokens, but don't get swamped by the technical jargon, because you'll miss the overall scam of what's happening here. So I'm hoping I can debunk what's going on here succinctly. Non-fungible tokens are used to create verifiable digital scarcity. There you go. They are not doing that, because the NFT itself might be scarce, but what it represents is not necessarily or enforceably scarce. An NFT can say, you own the rights to something. You can sign a contract with someone that says, I've just sold you my car. That doesn't mean you can't sell your car again to someone else later. It only means that you probably won't, because there's going to be legal consequences if you do. NFTs is exactly the same. I can create an NFT for something in the real world, sell it to you, then I can create another NFT and sell it to someone else. And the only thing that's going to be helped by this is that the legal system can look at it and say, there's evidence in this public database that this thing was already sold. So you've sold it twice, you've committed fraud. Not good. But again, how are we changing anything that existed prior? I don't think anything existed. I don't think there's any difference. Because you're talking about something in the real world, so there's no digital perfection or identical nature to each NFT. It's not like if you take a real world thing, hash it, you escape the avalanche effect. You don't get to say, I created this piece of art. I created the Mona Lisa and I'm creating an NFT of it, which is a hash of what it is, and then I'm saying I'm selling that to someone. Then I'm going to do it again, but people are going to pick up on the fact that I already sold it the first time because something of the same hash has been turned into a non-fungible. No, because you're never going to get the same hash twice, and I don't. Are people relying on that? I mean, I think I'm being foolish for going that technical on it because I don't think anyone that would buy an NFT understands what a cryptographic hash is. So I'm not even going to go down this path. Let's continue on. This has initially proven popular for blockchain games and collectibles like CryptoKitties on the Ethereum blockchain. NFTs can also be used to represent in-game assets which are in control of the user instead of the game developer. One exciting benefit of this arrangement means the non-fungible tokens or digital items may actually outlive the game. Yet another potential use is digital art, helping prove authenticity and ownership. Artwork is another example of how powerful NFTs can be. By allowing artists to create artwork on the blockchain as NFTs, okay, fair enough, then it's native to the chain, that's different. It means their content now becomes sellable globally on decentralized marketplaces, providing a means to collect, earn, and make a living off crypto. NFTs are one of the best ways to actually earn crypto over time without needing to invest it. Unlike scams, NFTs are legit. It's like opening a store on eBay or Etsy and you're trading and your time and work for money. This is important to talk about because if they're talking about art that's creative somehow natively on the Ethereum chain, I don't really think that that's possible in the way that they're implying here. You can't create art within a blockchain. You can upload data that represents art to a blockchain, but that's not the same thing. Like if you make a meme and you upload the meme to if you upload the meme to the blockchain, turn it into an NFT, and then sell that to someone else, yes, everything that's happened there's legit, but there's nothing to stop you from selling it again. So there's the assumption of enforcement of property rights that is not true because it can just be repeated and there's nothing the Ethereum network can do about that. There are a ton of reasons to buy NFTs. Unique. Each NFT is unique. It's the only one of its kind. You cannot make another NFT that is the same token number on the same smart contract. Right. But you can create a different NFT from the same art. That's what they're not fucking telling you here, which is infuriating to me. Because you can't spend the same Bitcoin twice. Because Bitcoins are native to the chain. Art is not native to any blockchain. So you can create another representation of the art that's slightly different, and you can create a second token that has the same ramifications and same function when it interfaces with the real world and the blockchain. Do you understand? Does that make sense as an explanation? I really hope it does. So, meaning there will only ever be one of that token. This is verified by the blockchain and can be seen by anyone. Ridiculous claim. This is the first claim on what gives an NFT its value on the subreddit r/NFT. On the question, what gives an NFT its value? Number 1, unique. False. It's not unique. It's unique in the sense that the NFT is unique, but it's not unique in the sense that what the NFT represents can't be mimicked. That's the problem here. Because you're not interested in the uniqueness of the NFT. Yes, that hash is the only hash that will be allowed in the blockchain. Fair enough, it can't be replicated. But you can just create a different hash of the same piece of art. The problem is you want to be the only owner of a piece of art. You don't want to be the only person in control of an NFT that can be created, meaning in a way that's different with regard to the blockchain, but is the same with regard to how human beings are going to view it. Difficult to understand, but important, because that is a completely false claim, and it's on the top of the biggest subreddit in the space, and if an idiot like me can debunk this stuff, then you really shouldn't be throwing money at it, because who the fuck is? It's so sad to me that people aren't going to look at this and go, "This is nonsense." How the hell is something like, if I take the Mona Lisa and I go, I've already made this example. Fuck it, I'm not going to do it again. Copyright. Your NFT might come with copyright if you are using Mintable.app. Don't know what that is. If the seller chooses to do so, it means that it's on the blockchain and that the owner of that token would have complete commercial copyright to use that image and asset. Again, how does this change anything from the real world? If I write a song, I automatically have the copyright for that song. If people choose to disrespect it, like entire countries, for example, like if you have a brand, if you're Android or something like that, and there's a brand, and China make a fake version of it and sell fake Samsung phones, or F phone instead of iPhone, who cares? No one does anything about it. Russia doesn't care about copyrights. If you want to download a bunch of stuff from torrent sites or anything like that, go to a Russian site and get it. They're not enforced. Does this change because an NFT was created at some point? No. Copyright is a human construct, and it's something that is debatable and something that needs to be enforced legally in order to have any meaning at all. And if it isn't, no one owns it. Who owns the NFT for rubbing two sticks together and creating a fire? What does that even mean? It's just something we all know how to do. But what if someone came along and said, no, I invented that, how to do that method, that's mine. The intellectual property is one of the most ridiculous concepts, and it's the most complicated thing to understand, and it's very sophisticated, and it falls apart all over the place. Like, intellectual property, how does it work? The internet made all this ridiculous anyway, because there's a certain recipe for chicken tikka masala. Okay, it's a cultural thing. Does every restaurant have to pay a royalty when they cook it? No. Do they have to pay a royalty for the songs they're playing in their restaurant? Yes. Because one's enforceable and one isn't, but they're both essentially the same thing. They're both essentially information. The internet made all information equal, which meant, whistling "Bar Bar Black Sheep" doesn't incur any penalties, but playing, a Disney, a whole new world, playing that does incur some sort of copyright thing, because that's Disney, right? And we know they enforce it, but the internet said, we don't care. Everything's just information. We're going to root around all the censorship. So what happened, copyright became a sort of weird thing that didn't really make sense anymore as a concept. But it, some information is complex, some information is simple. There used to be such a big divide between those that if a new word comes into the English language, like no one could copyright it because it would just spread too much, and it wasn't realistic to enforce it. But, a movie of 10 gigabytes in size, that's different. That can't just be communicated from person to person. It has to be like put on some sort of digital medium like a CD or something, and that you can enforce the copyright with that because only a few places can make CDs and distribute them. But then when we had a digital network like the internet where you could move that much information around between everyone, that was effectively us being able to talk from one another and say blah, and that would be 20 billion ones and zeros. You're communicating information. It's digital information. I don't know why I'm talking about this exactly, but it's quite interesting, I find. Yes, so copyright. The question of copyright is not a property that really belongs to anyone except as a legal construct that can be respected or denied. I don't know, it's getting more and more bizarre, really. Like, I mean, all you have really, again, we're just talking about evidence. Like, is a court going to hold it up and say, yeah, you own that thing and you're the owner of the copyright here? They will if there's certain evidence, and NFT can provide evidence of it, but it doesn't provide any more evidence than if you just had an email from whoever it was that sold it to you, acknowledging that they sold it to you. Even a verbal contract. Okay, a verbal contract is not as good as an NFT. That I agree with. But an email is at least as good. So what the hell are we doing talking about copyright? Rare is the next one on the list. Since they are unique and cannot be copied, they are rare. Yes, that's the point. An NFT is unique, an NFT cannot be copied. But another NFT serving the same function can be created just as easily. So the scarcity is pretend here. I mean, it's like, what's the example that I need to give here? It's like saying, it's like going down to the beach and watching a wave like lap on the shore, and you're saying no wave in the entire universe will ever be like that wave just was there. And you're like, yeah, that's true, but there's going to be another wave in 5 seconds, slightly different, that is in no meaningful way different. It's not identical, but it's not different in any way that anyone actually cares about. So you make an NFT, it's unique, it's identical. Another one, even if Ethereum's perfect, well, no NFT will ever exist that's identical to that one again. So, but it can be different in a way that is only trivially different and mathematically not technically identical, but with regard to, is it respected? Does it have some sort of relevance to the copyright in how it will be viewed in the legal system in the real world? Yes, it will. So, which NFT is the real NFT? Debatable. There's nothing hard here again, and this is what I'm talking about at the beginning of this video. You're borrowing characteristics from Bitcoin. In Bitcoin, if you spend coins that you have the private keys for, 100% of everything is correct and the proof is there, and if that didn't happen, if the conditions weren't met, if you didn't have the private key to sign a transaction, 0% of the requirements were met. You don't have half and halves. You don't have all of these like perfect hard characteristics that they're trying to steal from Bitcoin, because they're allowing people to assume this because they're preying on your naivety. They are not. A Bitcoin transaction it's not rare. It's only one can exist, and you can't replicate it in any meaningful way. You can't try and do a similar Bitcoin transaction where you say, okay, I'm gonna spend my Bitcoin and send it to this person, and then I'm gonna do a double spend and spend similar. I'm gonna make a slightly different transaction, spending the same coins and sending them over there, and then we go and fight it out in the real world and in the courts to see who really has to have the coins or not. Because if that was the case with Bitcoin, then you'd be back to the old system of banks, and you write 2 checks and give them off, or like you can do scams with a bank. Like they avoid all those problems by being centralized. And so it's a situation where Ethereum falls between 2 stools. Because it's not completely centralized, you can actually do some of these scams with it, but it doesn't have the advantage of having the centralization where some scams are avoided. But because it's only doing, because it can't enforce any of the things that it does with with the amount of decentralization that it does have, it means that it has the lack of ability to govern the things that need to be governed, because it's a complete free-for-all here. There's nothing stopping artists from creating identical NFTs that aren't mathematically identical, so the network will accept them, but they are effectively identical with regard to how we view them as human beings and how... Do you see what I'm saying? I really hope this is making sense. Collectible. NFTs are collectible. All right. There's another argument to make here, which is... I'm not going to dismiss NFTs in the real world as a concept, because they are akin to like lucky coin. I've got my lucky quarter here, and it's a baffling concept, like in No Country for Old Men, where he doesn't get killed because he chooses heads instead of tails, and then his would-be murderer says, don't mix that coin with the other coins. It's your lucky coin, saved your life, sort of thing, But it's just a coin, right? And it's the same as the other coin, but it's not. It has some sentimental value to you. And, then you've got Tamagotchis and stuff like that. And I'm not going to shit on any of that stuff. NFTs, before they became an Ethereum marketing thing, have existed forever, which is just anything with sentimental value to a human being. I'm not going to shit on that. Fair enough. I just think it's another thing that's existed beforehand that's been made needlessly complicated and digitized for no reason. Downloadable. Only the current owner of the NFT can download the file attached to it, making it This is not true. For God's sake, there's no enforcement here. If I make an NFT and I wrap it up like this, and that means because the NFT was... I don't understand the deep technical jargon here or the technical mechanisms of it, but someone else is in possession of the data, for God's sake, which means the original artist can violate the terms of the NFT at any point. That's just how it works. Downloadable, immutable. No one can change the metadata on the token. No one can remove your image. Well, you're only as immutable as the blockchain you're on top of. And Ethereum is literally a network defined by the fact that it's broken away and hard forked away from another network called Ethereum Classic because it broke its immutability deliberately because it wanted to reverse one of the smart contracts running on its platform. Ethereum is a network that has said to the world, we are not immutable. So an NFT is no more immutable than the chain it's sitting on top of. So, I mean, I don't even think it would come to that. Why would an artist require that Ethereum perform the equivalent of a double spend or hard fork or do a replay attack on its own network when they can just scam the owner out of the NFT by creating another NFT? Why would they even bother with all the technical complication? Again, do you see how deep we are into all this? Do you see all the claims that are being made here? All of these fancy words and all this what's the word I'm looking for here? There's so much technical stuff to get your head around here that you're sort of overwhelmed by the sort of mechanisms of it all. And dare I say it, I think this is how Andreas got lost, because Ethereum is such a technical, complicated clusterfuck to get your head around that you get lost. It's that old adage, we spent so long on figuring out how to do it that we forgot to ask whether or not we should do it. And Ethereum is the perfect example of that, because it is the most complicated, insane bunch of just mashed up, ruined denial of computer science and basic limitations of what blockchains can do and what they can't do. And it's fascinating. It really is to delve into it and go, wow, that's how you do that, and that's how that works. And making an NFT would be a fascinating learning experience for you. But should you? Should you make an NFT? Should you buy an NFT? Of course not. The whole thing is a bizarre experiment in just, it's, you know what it really is? It's like that kid in the restaurant who's got like a cup, and then they balance like, a dish on top of the cup, and then they put a fork like, over the top of the dish, and then they try and like hang a napkin off each side of the fork. And that's what Ethereum looks like to me. And I'm like, oh my God, the whole thing's going to come crashing down in a minute. Like, but I mean, it looks like fun. It is compelling for some reason. And you're like, oh, yeah, this is fun. We can do that. We can do that. What if we balance that on top of it? I'm like, why do it? The whole thing is so shoddily built and so ready to collapse. And then you look at Bitcoin, where it's just like everyone is just, it takes 2 years to get fucking one number changed in something in the code base, because everyone is thinking of every single possibility in which some situation might be made, in which you might degrade some other element of the ecosystem. It's been done so carefully by people that lose sleep at night over the most ridiculous scenarios that are so unlikely to happen, where there might be some disruption caused to the network. And it's just built perfectly. They've discovered bugs in cryptographic protocols that we've been using in computers for years that have just had bugs in them that we didn't even realize until Bitcoin came along with it just upgraded everyone's game. Building software from source, no one was ever able to produce identical hashes from what they would build, because everyone has different environments in which they're building the software. So Bitcoin invents something new called Gitian building, which is, download the source code, compile Bitcoin Core for yourself, and get from it a deterministic hash that will be identical to anyone else that goes through the same process. So you can really know that people are agreeing on what Bitcoin does, and they are thinking about threat models that you have no idea even exist. And we thank them so much for it, but we can participate in it. And there's a system being built by some serious people here. And what is an unfortunate byproduct of it is they've created a system that is so magically robust that other people are copying some of the architecture of it and pretending that they have the robustness of it, but with extra features. And in reality, they don't have the robustness, and their features, to add insult to injury, are all useless, and they are already things that already existed. Because why wouldn't they be? Because these are people that prey on the fact that it's difficult to understand what's going on here. So please, guys, just leave it with the fucking NFTs. Do me a favor, do yourself a favor. Bitcoin is the only serious project that we're really embarking on as a species at the moment. Way more than just money, way more than economics, politics, everything. It outclasses everything else that exists. Don't come at me with whatever Ethereum's next hype is. Just ignore it. Just leave it, please. Do the world a favor. And if you got through this, thank you so much for listening. And I've been getting some really interesting comments and great questions lately, and I have a lot of fun answering them too. So yeah, have a good time, everyone. Thanks so much.